This year the island is really intense. I don't have enough time to analyze everything that's happening. I don't know if every year they do a better job selecting contestants, or if more extreme things are just becoming normal on the show, or if the contestants are more manipulated than ever. But the fact is that this season is full of things to analyze. And today we're going to talk about Claudia's infidelity to Gilbert and the confrontation bonfire they've had. As always, with the goal of helping you understand what's happening in your relationships and in your life, so that we learn psychology, make better decisions. If you don't watch the show or don't know what happened, I'll summarize it for you. And now, let's move from talking about money to talking about love, both very important elements for our mental health. Claudia and Gilbert came to Temptation Island to overcome Claudia's jealousy, since they describe her as a controlling girlfriend, but also to improve her empathy and stop doing things that would bother her if Gilbert did them. Spoiler, neither of these two goals has been achieved, and in fact, the relationship is worse than ever. Wow, it seems that going on a reality show hasn't worked to solve relationship problems. What a surprise, huh? They had been together for a year and a half, living together since the second month, because Claudia is an intense person. She tries to get the most out of everything she likes right away, as we've also seen with her and Gerard, the single guy she cheated with.
Going so fast and jumping from one thing to another like we have has worn me out.
Okay.
Although they'd only dated for a year and a half, they'd known each other for 7 years. Since high school, Claudia pursued Gilbert because he was the only guy who wasn't chasing her, according to what they told us.
It felt like, since he wouldn't notice me, he was the one I needed to get to notice me.
Something else that's very interesting and worth noting to understand what has happened here is that she tells us that her previous boyfriends had, quote, driven her crazy.
I was in an on and off relationship for 4 years, and I was really unstable.
Those relationships didn't seem healthy or peaceful, and now she's with Gilbert, who's the complete opposite. A very calm, steady, thoughtful, rational, and patient man. In my initial analysis of the couples, I noted 3 concerns about this relationship. First, the very different personalities that Claudia and Gilbert have. Well, Claudia is the polar opposite of Gilbert. Emotional, intense, demanding, impatient, impulsive, dominant. In the analysis, I explained that when 2 people with such opposite temperaments come together, the more quote-unquote wild person is regulated by the calmer person. But of course, when that anchor isn't there, chaos, confusion, and bad decisions can happen. Second, the power asymmetry really caught my attention. Claudia is a dominant girlfriend who dictates what to do, what to think, what to want, how to dress.
He's my boyfriend, so he has to wear a little pink outfit like me. It's my favorite color.
Yours.
Her needs and desires are the most important, versus a boyfriend who is accommodating, adaptive, flexible, passive, and even submissive. Something that can create major issues in the relationship. Among them, for example, is that the more passive partner may change when they are outside the influence of the dominant one, and how the dominant partner might respond to changes in their partner when they're not watching them. This can be experienced as a betrayal, as a lie. But it's simply that if you always act under a very strong influence from someone, when that person isn't there, obviously new things are going to come out of you, or things that were repressed. Thirdly, I highlighted Claudia's personality as a predictor of infidelity, impulsive, short-term focused, someone who likes to be liked, to attract attention, to feel loved and validated, and that was the verdict I gave. My verdict is that this personality, which is like an untamed horse, can lead Claudia to make bad decisions. On top of that, maybe seeing this shift in Gilbert's attitude, because they're separated and she's not receiving that influence from her partner, Claudia might feel anger, betrayal, and this is going to be fuel that can really feed the fire of infidelity. Gilbert might also fall into it as a response. I'm not so sure about that, but it's more likely that they'll break up. But sooner or later, he will forgive her and they'll get back together. Well, I'm not ashamed to say that I feel tremendously proud of my analysis and my predictions. For now, everything I said about all the couples has been coming true. So I think I'm going to consider opening a clairvoyance service, or better yet, Claudiavoyance. I analyze you and see your future, 2 for 1. Now, jokes aside, the other day I was walking around Barcelona, down a street, and I saw a sign in a shop that said they had a tarot reader. And since I had some free time and I'm curious, I said, well, let's do the experiment. Just to try it out, I went in to have my tarot cards read. They themselves told me to record the session so I could consult it later. And well, even though I felt completely scammed, even though I already expected it, I have the recording. And I think it could be interesting to analyze it to mention all the manipulation techniques that this tarot reader tried to use to get information from me and to try to make her predictions and readings. aligns with my experiences or thoughts. If you'd like me to make a video analyzing this, let me know in the comments, it could be interesting. But anyway, let's continue with Claudia and Gilbert. My verdict wasn't very positive, as you can see, and soon after the show began, Claudia was unfaithful to Gilbert, with Gerard, the single guy who's already well known in the show's world.
Who's normal? A pussy in your neck.
But it wasn't just a silly act of infidelity. No, Claudia, being as intense as she is, went all in for Gerard. At first she refused, insisting she was in control and wouldn't fall. She fell, and hard.
I can handle quite a lot.
How much is quite a lot?
In fact, this is something we psychologists see frequently. Those people who overestimate their capacity for self-control, who don't detect the risk of infidelity or deception in themselves, who have that thought of, no, I would never be unfaithful, I'm above that, that would never happen to me. Since they go in with too much confidence and minimize the risk so much, sometimes they end up exposing themselves too much to temptation. They mistakenly encourage getting closer to people who might catch their attention or who they find attractive, under that internal narrative of, nothing will happen if I get close to this person because I would never cross that line. No, I would never be unfaithful to my partner. He's just a coworker I find handsome and nice. There's nothing wrong with getting to know him. I'm not going to do anything. And they start talking, they start meeting up, and a feeling starts to grow that gets bigger and bigger. And one day they end up doing something they never imagined. So, a top tip from a psychologist, even though it's pretty obvious, even though some people don't like to hear this, like they just don't want to accept it. If you don't want to see a fire burn, simply don't feed it. If you're attracted to someone, keep your distance, be cautious, and don't get overconfident or act recklessly. Most infidelities begin this way. Few people intend to be unfaithful from the start. Well, that's it. Claudia said no. She has it under control now and can handle temptation. That she can get really close, and she ended up doing everything. Gilbert, as I predicted, was unfaithful after seeing what his girlfriend was doing. Some people call this revenge, but I think it's more of a strategy to avoid facing painful emotions. After a breakup, many people immediately look for someone to get involved with, just to pass the time. And even though this acts as a distraction in the short term like a painkiller, it ends up being a serious mistake. Because when we don't connect with painful emotions, when we don't give ourselves time to be with them, we don't finish processing what happened, we don't integrate it, and we don't make good decisions afterwards. For example, I think Gilbert hasn't finished accepting or integrating what his partner has done.
And I love her very much. I mean, I haven't lost the love I feel for her.
Yes, we see in him a certain anger, indignation, pain.
Where are you going? You're such a hypocrite.
He quickly seems to set it aside, minimize it, and chooses to stay with Claudia, forgiving everything.
Waking up knowing that I'm absolutely sure I love you more than anything.
Of course, underneath all that is the fear of loss. There's that emotional dependence. But there's also that act of distracting yourself as soon as you see something painful. If the first thing you do when your partner treats you badly is distract and numb yourself with someone else, you haven't given yourself time to process what happened. You haven't faced the pain, anger, disappointment, or sadness, nor reflected on the kind of person you want by your side. Since you've been unfaithful, you now put yourself on the same level as your partner. By seeing yourself as partly guilty, the situation feels more balanced and forgiveness becomes easier. Probably if Gilbert had focused on connecting with the pain and reflecting, it couldn't be that easy for him to move on like nothing happened, but I'm getting ahead of myself. At the last bonfire, Gilbert's fellow contestants saw such shocking images of Claudia that they asked for a confrontation bonfire, so that Claudia could explain herself to her partner Gilbert. And well, about those explanations, I'm not sure those explanations really came through. Because what I noticed is that not even Claudia is very clear about why she did what she did.
No.
So why did you do it?
Because that's how I felt.
That's how you felt, right?
Yes.
What was wrong with you? What was wrong with you?
I got caught up.
This is something very common in people who are very impulsive, very emotional, with little self-awareness, who often lack clarity. They don't truly reflect on why they do what they do, why they want what they want, but rather they just act and then later look for some explanation for it. But anyway, I think that from different things Claudia says at the bonfire, we can guess what has been going on in her little head. And of course, this allows us to reflect and learn things for our own relationships and not make these same mistakes. Let's start with the bonfire, which begins with tension. The show sometimes does this to manipulate some contestants, and here I want to clarify that on the island there is no script. It's not scripted, what happens is spontaneous.
The heart leads.
But many times the producers do manipulate things to make things go in a certain direction and to make the plot more interesting. So there isn't an actual script, but there is manipulation. And in this case, what they do is have poor Gilbert waiting and waiting and waiting, so he starts feeling anxious. The fear and anger of thinking his girlfriend won't show up at the bonfire. The result?
How could she not come? I just don't understand it.
The meeting is already starting off tense.
Bravo. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I've often noticed something curious with Claudia, is that when she feels threatened, vulnerable, or singled out, what she does is puff up, mock, and become cold. It's like she tries to put herself above it, like she's punishing. She tries to suppress the emotions that could make her vulnerable.
I don't even care what you do afterwards or what I do afterwards, because honestly, I couldn't care less.
She's the kind of person that if you approach her with anger, with complaints, with tension, her response is going to be terrible. But if, for example, she sees you speaking from your feelings, sees you crying, then she really connects, she empathizes, and she might even break down with you. This happens to many people who tend to feel easily attacked, who may have a somewhat fragile ego or have felt judged and singled out by those around them. And so, when they feel like they're going to be questioned, a very strong need to defend themselves arises by attacking.
How can you stand there and show up like this? More applause. For what? What are you doing?
You're applauding me? Well, applaud me more.
Regardless of the kind of person you have in front of you, I always recommend in difficult conversations that instead of pointing out what the other person has done, instead of acting out of anger, we should approach it more from our own pain, from how the situation makes us feel. Use more I statements than you statements. I feel very hurt. I didn't expect this to happen. It's not the same as saying, you're a horrible person. How could you do this?
You? Why have you come here?
And who are you? I'm asking you.
Of course, I'm not judging Gilbert at all for how he's acting. It's totally understandable for him to act out that anger, and in fact, it's healthy for him to do so. It's simply a piece of advice that I recommend applying when we have to face a difficult conversation and we're afraid of how the other person might react. Returning to the bonfire, Claudia first explains that Gilbert has lied throughout their entire relationship.
Being someone you're not, lying to me throughout the entire relationship.
This accusation from Claudia simply comes from having seen sides of Gilbert on the island that she hadn't seen off the island. Remember what I said about symmetry in a relationship?
And who are you exactly?
Being overly dominant in your relationship and controlling how the other person should act. It's normal for unfamiliar behaviors to show up when you're away from your partner. Because simply when you're together, you're not allowing that spontaneity, that way of being to flow.
In this relationship, I'm clearly in charge because my personality is stronger.
In some way, you're influencing how he behaves too much.
Touching his little leg? The one who didn't even know how to greet a girl.
The person may not even know themselves, especially when you're gone. They start to get to know themselves, to discover themselves, to go back to who they were before. And of course, this can feel like a betrayal, like a deception, like hypocrisy, and that's how Claudia takes it.
Fake, let him go with her. You're such a damn fake.
But even though she talks about feeling betrayed or deceived, that's not really the reason for her infidelity. Rather, this has been more of a catalyst, a fuel for that act of infidelity. And the thing is, we usually think of ourselves as rational beings, that we know why we do what we do. But the truth is that we actually make decisions based on emotions. And then, if anything, we rationalize them with arguments, more or less logical, about why we've done what we've done. I don't know why I ended up cheating on my boyfriend, but after I did it, I realized there was something wrong in my relationship. So I assume that must have been the reason for my actions. Well, this happens in a lot of decision-making processes. First we act and then we justify it to ourselves to feel like rational beings, in control of our actions, and that we act logically and consistently. So as always, I recommend working on impulsiveness and introspection, and that you really pay attention to yourself while you're acting or before you act, and not just reflect after doing things. Because when you look back, all kinds of self-deception and self-manipulation come into play. Justifications. Okay, Gilbert keeps asking for explanations. Claudia keeps responding by making accusations against him. Clearly, she doesn't really know anymore. Or maybe she doesn't know at all. She doesn't know why she was unfaithful and sometimes justifies it by saying Gilbert also acted badly. Sometimes she focuses on attacking how he reacted to the infidelity, while also being unfaithful herself. She says being unfaithful just happened to her, as if that's a valid excuse. That's a very typical argument from the island that I've never really understood. I'm just doing what I feel. Laura, I did what I felt. He did it because that's what he felt.
I'm acting on what I feel.
I acted on what I felt.
He did it because that's what he felt.
And I did it because I felt it.
She sometimes expresses dissatisfaction in the relationship.
Whenever I share my feelings or ask for something, you do nothing.
And I think this is where we start to understand each other. Gilbert is receptive. He wants to understand what Claudia is missing in that relationship.
What you're telling me?
But Claudia still can't say it clearly. So let's decipher the different ways she's tried to express herself to understand what was going wrong for her. Or what she believes. was going wrong.
She's the best person I've ever been with in my life. I also think there were many things I needed to feel in the relationship but never did.
Well, this is something we see very often, that the person you have by your side is good, loves you. You love them, it's a healthy, safe relationship, but you don't know why it doesn't fulfill you. There's something missing, you don't know what it is, you feel dull, like there's nothing moving inside you.
You don't feel excitement or motivation, not just about sex, but life overall.
You might feel guilty for having a good person by your side, a good relationship, and not valuing it. You might fall into the self-deceptive mistake of looking for flaws and defects in your partner to justify your discomfort. Whatever it is, what Claudia describes is something very human and very common. Especially if you come from unstable, chaotic relationships, in which we know that conflict, that unpredictability, that insecurity. Though distressing and painful, they foster an addictive pull and passion. At the end of this video, I'll link a video where I explain why we can become addicted to conflicts in a relationship. And the thing is, Claudia's previous relationships have been chaotic, unstable, unpredictable, crazy.
I was going back and forth in a relationship I had for 4 years and I was really unbalanced.
I don't know much more about her past, but it's common that when your relationship experiences have been like this, you've learned that infatuation, love, passion, and interest are tied to that kind of behavior, dynamics, and emotions.
For example, I talked to another guy. Well, maybe I need my partner to set some boundaries for me.
In fact, it seems like Claudia herself is actually asking for a bit of conflict from Gilbert. And notice how interesting it is that she herself admits to setting up tests or provocations to try to get Gilbert to bring out this slightly more combative warrior side. She does things that aren't right in order to provoke reactions in him and bring toxic dynamics from the past into their healthy relationship. This is something I explained in great depth in the Relationship Patterns and Self-Awareness workshop. I explained that no matter how much you choose a better partner, or even if you choose a completely different type of person than you used to choose before, so that you don't fall into the same patterns again, no matter how much you change partners and choose something different, if you haven't understood your patterns, if you haven't worked on them and healed them, then you yourself, without realizing it, in this healthy, stable, beautiful new relationship, your actions will slowly bring it back to what you had before. It's as if you'd always lived in a very dirty house. You always wish you could live in a clean house, and finally you move into one. Since it's new and unknown, you're comfortable with what you had before because that's what you've learned. Without realizing it, little by little you start making a mess. You start throwing dirt around, so that you stop feeling uncomfortable with what's new and unfamiliar. Eventually, you notice the house is dirty and wonder, why do I always end up in dirty houses? Well, this is more or less a very brief summary of why. We always fall into the same relationship patterns. I have a calm, stable, secure boyfriend who loves me. I feel unsatisfied, like something's missing, so I talk to other guys hoping it'll make my boyfriend wake up.
Do you need passion?
Yes, exactly.
And that's what Claudia tells Gilbert many times. It seems like you don't react, like you don't care about anything.
Yes, he never cares about anything.
But it's not that Gilbert doesn't care. It's that Claudia has learned to identify and detect love in acts of control. In anger, in fear, in anxiety, in loss, in uncertainty, in having to win the person over.
I need to feel intensity. I need to feel that if I lose you, I'll die.
Look at what she says. I need to feel that if I lose you, I'll die. Obviously, when you love someone, the idea of losing them causes anxiety, pain, fear, and sadness. But you don't need to feel that constant sense of anxiety and fear.
We're living something like that. A relationship between people in their 50s when I'm 24.
That's not a synonym for being in love or for love. Knowing someone will be there, reliable and predictable, without needing to do anything major for them to stay. It's not taking someone for granted or stopping liking them or losing interest in them.
We were more friends than a couple.
It's just a safe kind of love. Claudia then complains their sex life isn't like it was at first.
Our sex life has gone from being super frequent to not frequent at all.
That she no longer felt desire, that she wasn't into it, that they barely had any encounters. But instead of asking, hey, why could this be happening? Where could it be coming from? Is it something normal? Is it something strange? Do I have unrealistic expectations? Instead of reflecting on that, she simply complains to Gilbert as if it were his fault or a problem with the relationship. It's like, I feel unsatisfied, so I complain to you instead of reflecting on where this feeling might be coming from. Obviously, if there is an association between desire and an unstable, chaotic, and anxious relationship, it's normal that at the beginning, when there isn't that stability yet, when you're not sure you have that person yet, that desire is high. But if we have this association governing the way we relate to each other, what's going to happen is that as soon as we feel that the relationship already feels secure, that it's already available to us, and we don't have to fight for it.
I fight with you, and I'm always fighting alone.
Desire is going to plummet, but that's not the relationship's fault or the other person's fault.
From once a day or so, it's true that things have gone down, but that's normal in a relationship. Maybe once a week, every 2 weeks.
You have to work on how that desire is set up, those beliefs, those lessons, those associations. You have to unlearn and you have to learn again. If you don't, this will happen with your partner and anyone after, which is a big paradox. Claudia, just a month after getting together with Gilbert, already wanted to move in and build a home with him. She wanted stability, a small dog, and to strengthen the relationship. For it to be something totally secure and solid, but nevertheless, as soon as she has it, she sabotages it, just like with Gerard, where things get intense very quickly. They're together all the time right away, talking about the future, about trips. There's a part of Claudia that longs for that bond, that commitment, that security. But there's a confused part with experiences and lessons learned, mistaken ones, that leads her to reject what she longs for so much at the same time. Even going so far as to look for flaws, defects, and reasons to distrust her partner and break that bond.
What happens is that you have a fear inside you that you don't understand.
You were going to do it.
You thought I wouldn't do it? How could I?
He can't manage to stay with what is beautiful and healthy. It's a kind of self-sabotage after all.
It's the same on a Tuesday morning as it is on a Sunday morning. I've told you many times you never tell me how you feel.
And this happens to a lot of people. They look for someone healthy, stable, and mature. They do it in a logical, rational, conscious way. But then, on an unconscious level, on an emotional level, there are relational patterns that will lead them to reject what they have consciously sought.
At the start of a relationship, it's normal to feel amazing, but those feelings change over time.
And well, putting aside Claudia's case and the case of those people who have grown and who have learned unhealthy relationship patterns, in general, sooner or later, everyone has to adjust their expectations when it comes to romantic relationships. And to understand that it's not realistic to expect to feel throughout the whole relationship what you felt at the beginning. Yes, it sucks, but that's how it is.
What did you feel, if you don't mind me asking?
Spark adrenaline.
Sooner or later, you have to accept it if you want to enjoy a relationship. A secure one. In a committed, serious relationship, having someone else spark that feeling you had with your partner at the beginning doesn't mean anything. It's just a new stimulus, it's something to discover, to reach, it's pure dopamine. And as soon as you have it, that spark will fade just like it did with your partner. So looking for new people doesn't solve anything. Not having realistic expectations about what a real relationship is will keep you from ever being able to enjoy one. That's just how it is.
Someone's actually proud of that.
It's not about whether I feel proud or not proud, it happened. Do you want me to start crying?
I've been blind for years while they've always spoken badly of you.
This analysis has been very focused on Claudia so far. Well, we see that she's the one who has been unfaithful, has made bad decisions, makes a lot of mistakes, without really knowing why she does it now. I would really recommend that she go to therapy and analysis so she can break these patterns and cycles. Otherwise, she'll bring them into every relationship. But I will point out something Claudia is right about in her relationship.
If you don't love him, say so. It shouldn't always be just what Claudia says. Not everything I say is final. If you need to tell me something...
Damn, I've told you a million things.
Remember, we discussed how she was dominant in the relationship while Gilbert was more passive, submissive, and flexible. Relationships don't have to be completely symmetrical. There are stronger personalities, others more flexible. But it's important that those with this more flexible, adaptive, passive tendency make an effort to maintain and protect their needs, values, goals, and desires. That they don't fall into that tendency to forget themselves in order to adapt to the other person. A symmetrical, healthy, and fair relationship requires more than just the dominant person restraining themselves. The other person must set boundaries, express themselves, and stop the dominant one. Not just for the relationship, but also for themselves. And interestingly, it seems that Claudia is asking Gilbert to do that. Maybe not in a way that's so close to the theoretical explanation of what's happening, but she is telling him, in other words.
If you dislike something about me, say it.
Be assertive, set boundaries with me.
I need you to tell me off if that's how you feel. I don't get it.
Stand up for your desires, protect your identity, be yourself, say what you feel, say what you want.
I've asked you 1,000 times about your past. I've asked you 1,000 times how you feel about things, and you always tell me you don't care.
Because sometimes when a person is too accommodating, passive, flexible, even if it's with good intentions, their lack of assertiveness can sometimes be perceived and interpreted as apathy, indifference, or lack of interest, even though that's not the case at all.
You haven't talked to your mother in months. How many times have I cried or asked you how you feel, how you're coping? What do you always say to me? I don't care.
This is something Gilbert needs to work on, not just to improve his relationship with Claudia, but also for himself.
But it's good that you see your mother and cry, and it's good to feel that things affect you, and not that you don't care about anything.
Because if not, in every relationship, he will end up merging with the other person, and whoever is next to him can get confused, can go crazy. Getting caught in a cycle of asking and demanding things, he ultimately doesn't know what he truly wants. Notice that Gilbert practically gives Claudia free rein. To satisfy her needs, complain about whatever you want, demand whatever you want from me. Demand whatever you want from me, I'll give you everything. And what we see is that Claudia is left confused, not even knowing what she feels or what she wants, because anything is possible when there are no limits, and you can have or ask for whatever you want. Desire can, in a way, disappear. Because sometimes desire needs another person to reach, get to know, and discover. If the other person is always available, lacks individuality, and doesn't set boundaries, then the curiosity and interest in discovering them can decrease. Desire needs boundaries in order to exist. As you can see, it's the perfect storm, as they say. A girl who equates love with conflict, turning points, certainty, madness, and anxiety. She gets together with a guy who offers stability, calm, certainty, and peace. A dominant girl with a tendency to take over, to prioritize her ideas, needs, and interests. With a compliant boy who adapts, who forgets about himself. And a girl who needs structure, who needs to have boundaries set for her, who needs to be made to look at herself and reflect and be self-critical. With a boy who is permissive, who forgives everything, who gives everything. Even though people may criticize me for this, I already know. Since Claudia's behavior has left a lot to be desired. I think they're a couple who, if they worked on a lot of things, both individually and as a couple, they might have something beautiful. I believe they love each other and have genuine affection and good intentions. And in terms of couples therapy, they're in a good place. Even if it doesn't seem like it, they're at the point of starting to understand what the problem is. They're not a couple who have known for a long time what's wrong, who have already gotten help, who have already tried everything, who can't manage to make any changes. No. They're a couple who, if you put them in front of a good therapist with some good insights, explanations, psychoeducation, exercises, therapy, they could improve a lot. Really a lot. My predictions, again, I think they're going to leave together. And if they don't leave together at the reunion, they'll be together. That's what I think, especially after Claudia saw that Gilbert keeps betting on her despite her mistakes. And especially after learning a good lesson when she saw that Gerard already got bored of her. He dumped her just like that. Claudia realizes that no matter how much she complains about her relationship, boring, what happened to her with Gerard is probably what awaits her outside her relationship with Gilbert. I think Claudia will realize that the perfect relationship doesn't exist and that her expectations in a partner aren't realistic. And I think that's why they'll choose to be together. I'm not sure if they'll improve things after leaving the island or just return to how it was before. But that relationship is supposed to end. To understand what happened, take a break and start a new one. Hope you enjoyed the video, learned something, and I'll see you next time. Bye!